Hey, Big Bulls, welcome to another episode of Bullseye. Here are the three hot topics for you for this week.
Up first, we are going to be talking about Trump tarifying the steel sector in India. Secondly, we are going to be talking about whether there's going to be a chance for Brightcom shares to relist on the stock exchanges. And finally, we are going to be talking about a new IPO opening tomorrow, the Quality Power IPO, and we'll examine whether that will be electric for investors.
So, Nitin, Trump pumped up his tariff talks, right? And he slapped around 25% of tariff on steel and aluminum imports, right? Now, this tariffied the metal stocks, especially Indian metal stocks. And in just the first 2 days of the week, we saw the Nifty Metal Index fell by 3%. And, stocks like Tata Steel, Jindal Steel, Nalco, all these were among the top draggers. Now, it has recovered quickly since then. But still, of course, there is a sentiment that's been dragging this.
So the sentiment is primarily because people are worried how much steel we probably send to the US and tariffs will be imposed on that steel, right? So put that in perspective for us, Saloni. How much steel do we actually send to the US?
So our steel secretary, Sandeep Pondrik, he puts it into perspective, and he said that we produced 145 million tons of steel last year, of which 95,000 tons was exported to the US. So how does it matter that out of this, you're not able to export just, about 95,000 tons, right? So as per him, all this shouldn't impact us much, right? And also, India is a net importer of steel, especially from China. So technically, we don't export that much, especially to the US, right? So obviously, the direct impact is not that much as, we would be thinking.
Right, but I do want to ask you about one thing. And this is a term that we often come across, when there are tariffs and everything in place, which is the concept of dumping, right? So tell us a little bit more about steel dumping and how that's potentially going to be a problem for India.
Yes, right. So in simple words, steel dumping is when other countries sell steel in India at very low prices, right? And this often is below the cost at what they actually produce the steel, right? And now this makes it hard for the domestic Indian steel companies to compete because they can't obviously make it so cheaper and sell at that cost, right? Now, India isn't a top steel exporter to the US, as I said, but the move will push countries like Canada, Mexico, Brazil, and South Korea, who are major exporters to the US, to actually now go and look for the new markets to obviously start exporting their steel, right? And India will obviously be a very key market for them.
Right. So essentially, to sum up that bit, tariffs on other countries makes it harder for them to export to the US, which means they're going to look at India, seeing the rapid growth that we are seeing over here. And that means there's going to be a flood of steel supply coming into the country that could potentially hurt our local domestic steel producers as well, right? And that's going to be a problem even for our steel producers to export their products abroad.
Right. Yes. Now, of course, as you mentioned, of course, this is going to lead to the cause of oversupply as well. And this will also put even more pressure on the steel prices, right? And now steel prices and India's steel industry is actually struggling with rising imports from China, as I mentioned. It even hit record high in December. Plus, Indian producers who have this big export in terms of revenues, obviously, they're also going to feel some pinch from there. On the flip side, obviously, these tariffs are meant to, give a boost to US domestic manufacturing, right? So companies who have these operations in the US, Indian companies' operations in the US, will sort of benefit. For example, Hindalco's, Novelis, and JSW Steel, both of them have some sort of operations in the US. And that's what we saw with their stock movements as well, right, this week, that they weren't as hit as other metal stocks.
Right. So as fund managers in India typically say, even in the steel sector, it's a stock pickers market. So you have to pick and choose wisely if you're taking a punt on steel companies in India.
Right. So around 5.7 lakh investors, retail investors, are stuck with the Brightcom Group not tradings from the last 7 months, right? Because NSE and BSE decided to suspend the stock. So what's going on there?
Right. So Brightcom Group is this Hyderabad-based company, and they offer these digital market solutions, and they've been around since around 2010. So they've been in the business for a while. But what has happened is they failed to submit 2 quarters worth of their results. And SEBI's rule, SEBI, the regulatory authority for stock markets, the capital markets in India, their rule is that if they fail to submit 2 consecutive quarters of financial results, then that's a big red flag. So exchanges like the NSE and BSE took it upon themselves a while ago to say, hey, listen, we're going to stop allowing trades in Brightcom shares to take place.
So should investors have seen this coming?
Well, I would think so, Saloni, because if you actually trace the history of Brightcom over the past couple of years, you will notice that the SEBI scrutiny for non-compliance has been in the news for at least a while now, right? So everyone's been aware of it. And since 2022, Brightcom's stock had plummeted from 100 rupees to just 10 rupees.
Mhm.
And a large part of this was due to the what will SEBI do kind of overhang on it. But the thing with retail investors, and we have spoken about this earlier, is that retail investors typically jump onto these kind of stocks hoping to make a quick buck, right? So they now hold around 43% of the company, and well, let's just say that they should have been cautious. And just to add on to this, I know there have been a lot of Telegram groups just
Right.
talking about Brightcom, right? With obviously both sides giving their spiel on why Brightcom is a great stock, some of them saying no. But all of these are red flags for retail investors to really watch out for before trying to jump in and make a quick buck.
Right, right. But I was reading that this week, SEBI released this final order in this matter, right? So what did they actually find?
Yeah, so that's the reason why we are talking about it, because now that the final order has come in and Brightcom is saying that they're probably complying with a lot of things, there's hope that there's going to be a relisting of the shares. But just going back to the order, and what SEBI found is that just very basic things like how they were recognizing losses. So in some of the years, assets which were not revenue generating and they should have written it off as impairment losses, Brightcom chose not to recognize in the way that it's actually supposed to recognize, which meant that it inflated profits also, because the loss was supposed to go on the P&L, and they decided not to show it on the P&L at that point. So it inflated profits. So if I was to just give you the number over here, in FY19 and FY20, these tricks inflated profits by 1,280 crores, right? And naturally, investors, they're looking at the P&L. I mean, a bunch of them might be looking at the P&L. They're seeing good results, and they might be wondering, hey, this is the hidden gem that I should be investing in, and they jump onto it, right? But what has also happened is during this period, another red flag, obviously, is promoters cashing out and making use of a rally in the stock price. So promoter shareholding actually fell from 40% in March 2014 to just 3.5% by June 2022, right? So these are all warning signs for investors that they should have paid attention to. So now SEBI has actually ordered Brightcom Group to upload the subsidiaries financials for this FY15 to FY22 period on his website within 15 days, right? And they also put a 34 crore penalty on the business and its promoters.
Right, right. So typical, signs of fraud that we've seen in stock markets before as well, right?
Yeah.
Now the question of, when you were saying that there's a possibility of, if they will relist or not. So
Yeah.
what's next?
Well, we don't know, because we've been hearing that relisting story and saying that they've, complied with everything that SEBI has asked for a while now. But again, it's my guess is as good as anyone else when that'll actually happen. But all we can say is those retail investors, 43% of those shareholders, or in numbers as you put it, the 5.7 lakh retail investors, will just be waiting to see what happens next. There's no guarantee at the moment. Okay, so moving on, Saloni, there's quite a bit happening in the IPO market. I know we are not talking about Hexaware Technologies today, but let's talk about something else that seems to be on everyone's radar, which is the Quality Power IPO, which opens tomorrow. Tell us a little bit about that.
Right, right. So a little bit about the company first. Quality Power Electrical Equipments. It was founded in 2001, and it focuses on energy technology. So what it means that they make important this high voltage gear and equipment that helps transfer energy from renewable sources like solar and wind to power grids, right? And they specialize in solutions for generating, transmitting, distributing, and even automating this electricity. So much of this is actually technology based.
Right. So the way I'm hearing it is, it's not supplying to consumers like us. It's a business to business or a B2B company.
Right. So their main customers actually include, power companies, industries that use a lot of power, and also renewable energy groups, right?
And what's it going to use the money from the IPO for, Salon?
Right. So they're planning to raise around 850 crore, and this has two parts, right? Around 225 crore is worth of fresh issue, and rest is an offer for sale that its promoter Chitra Pandyan is selling, right? And that's worth around 630 crore. So most of that money is obviously going to go to him. But from that 225 crore, the company is going to obviously fund his acquisitions over the years, and the IPO money helps it also double down on this, right? It will use some of it to buy another company called Meru Electrical and some other acquisitions and new equipment too, and also for the general business purposes as well.
Right. So, okay. So now it sounds to me like it's a little bit of a capital intensive business being in this industry. So tell us a little bit more about the numbers and break that down for us.
Right. So I'm just going to read out, from FY24, actually, they made a net profit of 55 crore, and this is on a revenue of 300 crore, right? Now, most of the company's revenue actually comes from their international operations, and that makes up about 76% of their total revenue in FY24. This is on the back of them supplying to over 100 countries and serving industries like automotive, oil and gas, chemical, all these sectors. And this is across 6 continents. So this makes them like a really, global player in the field, right? And here's how it compares with the listed peers on the BSE and the LSE. And, this is how the company says it is indicative of its growth, right? I'm going to quote it from their DRHP. They say that from a single operations unit in India in 2004 to 7 units today in India and abroad, right? So this is obviously they're trying to talk about their growth story here. Right. And they're also playing to their strengths as a global player in the energy transition and power tech. And they believe that they are ready to kind of take advantage of this whole world trying to move into decarbonization and green energy transition, right? So that's something that they are betting on.
Right. So the IPO opens tomorrow on the Feb 14th and it closes on the 18th of February. And the price band is between 401 to 425 rupees per share. And with the markets looking a little bit volatile, it'll be interesting to see what the demand for this power company will be from Indian investors. So that's it from us this week, folks. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Bullseye. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon too so you know when the next episode drops. We'll see you next Thursday.